Updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. In addition to offering the speech in defense of Western civilization and, frankly, America First policies before the UN General Assembly yesterday, President Trump also made time to meet with other heads of state individually, Malay, Argentina. We'll talk about that a bit later, as well as Zelensky. And the relationship with Zelensky has improved dramatically since that unfortunate public spat they had at the Oval Office when Zelensky visited several months back. He's taking a different approach to Putin now is President Trump. This is how it went with Zelensky.
An interesting day, I think a very productive day. And we're going to start a meeting with the president, who we all know very well, and he's a brave man, and he's putting up one hell of a fight, and we'll see how that all turns out. But we're going to have a meeting, and we have about 30 meetings scheduled today. We have a lot of meetings scheduled today, going pretty late into the night. But this is an important one, and we have great respect for the fight that Ukraine is putting up. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Well, it doesn't sound like a guy who is going to walk away from Ukraine. He added, after getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, after seeing the economic trouble it is causing Russia, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. He believes Ukraine now can win and should win. And he's taking a much more aggressive posture towards Putin rhetorically when asked whether or not Russian drones or aircraft that enters NATO airspace should be shot down.
Do you think that NATO countries should shoot down Russian aircraft if they enter their airspace?
Yes, I do.
For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by George Beebe, former director of Russia analysis at the CIA and a former staff advisor to Vice President Cheney on Russia and on intel matters. Currently director of grand strategy at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. George, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So how about those fairly strident comments, both positively in the direction of Ukraine and Zelensky, and much less positively in the direction of Putin? What does that signal to you?
Well, I think the big question here is, has President Trump given up on the prospect of forging a compromise peace settlement in Ukraine? And if you look at the rhetoric, superficially, I think a lot of people would say, well, yeah, he's basically said we're done. It's up to Russia and Ukraine to figure out how this war ends, whether it's on the battlefield or at the negotiating table. Good luck. Let us know how things go. But I'm not so sure that that's in fact where the president is right now. I think he is certainly frustrated that he has not been able to get the two sides to reach a compromise. But I think what he is saying here is to all of the parties, Europe, Ukraine, and Russia, unless you're willing to take a more realistic position on terms of a settlement, go ahead and fight this out. See how this goes. Now, this notion that Ukraine can actually drive Russian forces off of territory that they are occupying in Ukraine is absolutely false. The Ukrainians can't drive the Russians off of the territory that Russia holds in Ukraine right now. They proved that in 2023 when they launched this big counteroffensive that had all kinds of support from the United States and Europe. And it utterly failed. It took no territory back whatsoever. The problem that the Ukrainians face here is that this is a war in which the defense has an enormous advantage over the offense. It is very hard to take territory The Russians are experiencing that right now. But if the Ukrainians were to try to go onto offense, they would fail. And I think what President Trump has done very cleverly is say to the Ukrainians, you need to be a lot more realistic about what you're doing in this war. And for Europe, this is also, I think, an alarm. What he has done is to say to the Europeans, you don't want to compromise with Russia? Fine, you support Ukraine. You provide them with the money and the weapons that they need. And that's going to be an alarm bell for the Europeans. So I think this is actually an effort to bring some realism to all of the parties in this conflict.
Well, the other thing he does when he says, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. Well, anything short of that occurring, and hey, that's the EU's fault.
Yeah, no, that's right. And the EU does not want to be in a position to try to back Ukraine and confront Russia on its own without U.S. support. And if you notice Trump's rhetoric, he used that term NATO as if it meant Europe, but not the United States. And it wouldn't be hard for the Europeans to understand that. And that is alarming to them as well. You know, the notion that they would be going up against the Russians, shooting down Russian aircraft without the United States military standing behind them, defending them, that in turn, I think, makes them very concerned. So I think this is a gambit to try to get to jolt these players into a more realistic negotiating position.
Including Putin, when he says, look, Russia has been fighting, this is Trump, this is a direct quote, Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. This is not distinguishing Russia. In fact, it's very much making them look like a paper tiger. So he's signaling to Putin, you know, nobody's afraid. I'm certainly not afraid of you. We're not afraid of you. You're at a stasis, in a war that you should have won easily in terms of what your desires were. And so if you want to continue to dig in and deplete your resources, manpower and otherwise, then go ahead and dig in. We're going to stick with our play. We're going to represent our interests in Ukraine, and you're going nowhere. So you better get back to the table.
Right. So this sends two messages to the Russians. Number one is we might walk away from this process. That alarms the Russians, not because they don't think they can ultimately prevail on the battlefield in Ukraine. I think they believe they can. But what it says to the Russians is your opportunity for rapprochement with the United States, for improving your relationship with the United States, might go away. That window might be closing. And the Russians want a better relationship with the United States because it makes them less dependent on China. They want more room for maneuver. They want to be a great power in the world. Well, a great power in the world is not the junior partner of China. They need a relationship with the United States and the West. So that was the message that Trump was sending to Putin.
And what was the message he was sending to the UN when he said he said explicitly, what is the purpose of the United Nations? I've always said the UN has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. The Wall Street Journal built on that and offered the editorial board. Mr. Trump didn't say this, but we will. Ukraine war, the UN has been hapless. Gaza, it's mostly emboldened Hamas to refuse to compromise. China's expansions in the South China Sea, useless. What is the purpose of the United Nations? Does anybody know?
Well, it has clearly failed to live up to the potential that the founders had after World War II when they were trying to create an organization that would prevent the kind of great power conflict that became so disastrous in the 20th century. And it has failed to live up to that. And right now there's a challenge that the United Nations faces, and that is, can it manage these tensions, these conflicts between great powers and prevent a spiral into direct conflict. So I think President Trump was essentially saying to the UN, show us your utility. Let's demonstrate through practical achievements that the UN can do what it was intended to do. And I think he's absolutely right. The UN does face that kind of challenge right now.
And with respect to the central tenets of his speech that we were discussing before you joined us, his message to Western nations, the industrialized world, hey, listen, you're destroying yourselves with your open borders policies, as well as this climate change silliness and your sort of anti-growth energy policies. And so basically, look at what I'm doing and repeat it and mimic it, basically.
No, that's right. And there's no question that uncontrolled borders are a huge problem, not just for the United States, but many other countries in the world, and Europe, I think, more than any other. This is something that does require action. And unfortunately, the political processes in much of the West have paralyzed government's ability to take action on this. And I think President Trump is, again, throwing down the gauntlet, saying this can't continue. It will result in the suicide of the West and many other countries as well.
George Beebe is a former director of Russia analysis at the CIA, former staff advisor to VP Cheney on Russia and Intel Matters, currently the director of grand strategy at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. George Beebe, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Ooh, something smells good.
Let's see. Melt 2